In 2003, an advocate with Mission Inc.'s Home Free community program named Mabri started the Immigrant program. At the time, the Immigrant program was one of a kind in Minnesota, serving specifically immigrant refugees escaping domestic violence. Today, Mabri still runs the Immigrant program at Home Free Community Program. Continue watching as she shares why the program was started and what makes it unique.
Yeah, there wasn't anything like this program now. A lot has been implemented after this program in other shelters because I educate other shelters about the immigrant and refugee population. When I started, we used to go and educate the immigrant communities, the prosecutors, the public defendants about the immigrant and refugee program. First, we have to understand that most of the immigrants and refugees that come into this country have not been exposed to this kind of system here in United States that when you are abused, you have help. Normally, in their country of origin, what normally happens is that when you are abused, you go to your parents and your parents will bring you back and they don't have information like we have here. So when they come here, their main difficulties is the language barrier, their language skill. So it's difficult to communicate. And then they normally live in isolation, no friends, no family, no community. So it's difficult for them to report the abuse. And then they also lack the access of medical, social, and legal system because in their country of origin, there's no legal system that will help an abused woman. In some countries, I should say that not all. Sometimes the barriers here is that their experience about law enforcement in their country is different from here. So they gather that too and come here and they are scared to call the law enforcement here. And so that's hard for them. And one other thing too that I see with immigrant women too is that most of them are either undocumented or they don't have the status. So to call the police to it's some other issue that they might not want to call the police because they feel that they could be arrested since they are undocumented. When it comes to deportation, it's hard on the family because if it's the victim that is being deported, at least we have reliefs for them, like for them to apply for their status, like the VAWA, U visa, or T visa for them so that they can stay in this country. And it's a long process. Now it takes a year and a half for a woman to even get a work permit. The justice system and the legal system, I don't think they are fair. They have a fair hearing for immigrants, to be honest with you, because most immigrants are not criminals and they treat them as criminals and put them in jail where you have hardcore criminals in jail. So that's not good. And sometimes they don't use professional interpreters. So sometimes I go to court, the person that is interpreting, if it's a language that I understand, they really doesn't interpret everything. And sometimes I tell the women that if you know that this interpreter is not interpreting the right thing, you can always tell the judge, just because you don't speak the language fluently, but there are some things that you could tell that is not right. I have a lot of successful stories, but the one that I'm going to talk about is something that happened a long, long time ago when we started this program. This one came from Bangladesh, and it was forced marriage. Family forced her into the marriage. So she ended up at the shelter, but she could not get her children with her. So what happened was that we we went to court and got an order for protection, and they were leaving that day to Bangladesh. So they were already in the plane. We had to get law enforcement to remove all of them. But we had to go and remove the kids. So the kids came back to the shelter. So later on, I think the woman went back to Bangladesh. She came back to United States and didn't come to Minnesota because the family is here. So she ended up in Washington State. So I do communicate with her now and then. I wish more shelters could do more for immigrant women because food is the big thing. So they are not used to the American food. So when they get here, the food at the shelter is so difficult. Just a few shelters now that are doing what Home Free is doing, that provides them cultural food.
To learn more about Mission Inc.'s Home Free Community Program and Immigrant Program, visit missionsinc.org.